Welcome back, everyone, to another week of Just Jossing. I think this is our fifth week, sixth week.
One of those two, sure.
This is a week. I am half of your dynamic duo of hosts, Sabrina Hannon.
And I'm Jasmine Heron. Jasmine Heron. I even know my name. The other half of the dynamic duo.
And we are in season 2 of Buffy, and we are starting off with Lie to Me.
So Lie to Me is one of the episodes that is specifically written and directed by Joss Whedon. So as the show, goes on, he started passing off the writing to other people, and he would have his input, but there were other writers on board. This one was one of his babies. This is one that he really was hands-on with.
Did he do that a lot with the backstory episodes?
Yes, but I think he also did it for like the emotional development stories.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a Monster of the Week episode, he usually didn't, get too hands-on with that. But if it was something that had some kind of emotional arc or emotional gravitas to it, he was right on in there.
Yeah, I know, like, the body and those snippets he was very hands-on with.
Mm-hmm.
Which we'll get into later.
Yes. So we start off at this playground, this creepy playground with like things swaying, swings just kind of drifting in the lack of wind, and
for a moment I was like, is this the witches, like the episode where they're like the witch hunt happens? Like I was so confused.
Yep. But that's another thing that happens in that episode is there is that same park. Same park. Yep. And Drusilla's there. Mm-hmm. And Drusilla is being her creepy self. And this little boy's like, no, I don't want to interact with you, crazy lady. And then you see she's gearing herself up to attack because she says, I'm not a person. And then Angel steps in and tells the kid, run home. And also, the kid's like, oh, mom's always late, but it looks way dark.
Oh, yeah.
Now, later in the episode, they say that sunset is at 6:27. So, like, it's already, like,
7:30.
7:38. Like, where is this mom that she was going to be so late that she's just like, hey, kid, hang out in the park by yourself until after sunset?
Like, was he there with a friend? And if so, why did that friend's parent just be like, oh, see you later?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it might have been like, so latchkey kids were a little bit more common back in the 90s. Like, I feel like now they're like, oh, no, can't have a kid unsupervised by themselves, not okay. But I do remember when I was growing up, there were kids whose parents didn't get off of work until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. And so they were expected to either stay after school or the bus would drop them off right in front of their house. And they had a key to let themselves into their house, and they had to stay in their house until their parents came home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but even those parents weren't like, go hang out in this park. I mean, there's a lot of deaths in our town, but I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yes. And I'll comment on the amount of deaths later on in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's Drusilla, and she's flirting-ish with Angel, but not really. And you can see Angel is torn with how to respond to Drusilla. Where with other vampires, he has no problems just killing all the vampires. But he sees Drusilla, and he's like, nope, can't handle that. Please just leave.
Which is interesting when you think about the fact that I wouldn't say he had no problem killing his sire, but like he does. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as we find out in this episode, or maybe we knew beforehand, I think we knew beforehand maybe that Angel is Drusilla's sire, Angel is Drusilla's sire. So I mean, it would be like killing your child, but also we see vampires do that sometimes. So
it's not explicitly said, I believe, until then. We talk about Spike saying, "You were my sire," or at this point we'll find out like grandsire, and we haven't quite worked out all the details. But Angel does explain later in this episode to Buffy the horrors of that he inflicted upon Drusilla.
oh yeah, like. And in that regard, it makes sense that, like, as someone with a soul, that he would have a harder time killing her because of what he did to her when she was a human, how he literally drove her insane.
Mm-hmm. And so Buffy is on a rooftop, like overseeing the park. And I'm like, is that a school rooftop? Like, where is this random building that she's just running along and then being like, oh, hey, the park. But she looks down. She sees Angel talking with this woman. He says, you know, she says in her note writing later to Willow that she looks very pretty and is wearing, you know, very pretty, wearing an old dress. And Willow asks, is she a vampire? And Buffy's like, I don't think so. They looked really close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because at this point, Buffy only knows Angel to be like a little vampire slayer himself.
Mm-hmm.
So also I have to say, when Buffy and Willow are passing the notes back and forth, made me remember high school myself, just like sneaking the note. Although I don't think I was ever brave enough to pass it to someone who was next to me. My friend always like was in front of me, or I was
You did the behind the back or the
yeah. Because going like reaching your arm out across that is high risk maneuver.
So in some of my classes, they used to have two desks together, two desks paired together, and then two desks paired together, and then two desks paired together. Or it would be, instead of separate desks, little tables. And it was 2 and 2 and 2. And so you always had your note partner.
Specifically in science.
Yep. So you always had your note partner who was on the same table. Sometimes you would do the thing where you had one notebook, like you had your notebook and their notebook, and then there was a notebook in between the two of you that both of you were writing on.
Yep. Also, I was definitely much more of a fan of like writing a note like in class and then giving it to somebody who actually wasn't in that class, like they're in the hallway or or whatever. Ooh.
Your locker.
Yeah. Sorry, Scarlett. I just coughed in the cat's face.
So then we see Jenny and Giles. And Jenny and Giles are developing a relationship. And Jenny's talking about a book that she borrowed. Is this correct?
Yes.
She's talking about a book that she borrowed that she's like dog-earing and marking all over.
And he basically, Giles might as well be clutching his pearls. Like, because it's a rare book too. It's not just like he picked up I don't Twilight and handed it to her. It's like a rare book.
Actually, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've conflated two different episodes together. Is this the one where I think maybe it's the next one, she calls him a sexy fuddy-duddy.
I think so. I don't have any notes on Giles and Jenny at this point, because my notes go right from Buffy and Willow passing notes to Billy Ford.
Yep. Billy Ford shows up and Xander is immediately being possessive and grumpy again. Like, it's blah. Like, he is so toxic masculinity there. Like, she can't have another male friend.
An attractive male friend.
Yeah, why doesn't she have any fat friends? Like, but so Billy, this was the guy who was the male lead from Roswell.
This is a big deal.
Was it that year or 2 years later? Like,
I
It
think
was
it was at the same time. He was also in Dawson's Creek.
was he?
Yes.
I wasn't really up on Dawson's Creek, so
Yeah, I don't think he was one of the main guys, but he was in Dawson's Creek as well. He had a recurring character. So he was kind of a big score for them to have.
at that time, I thought this was one of his like earlier roles.
It is, 'cause I do think Roswell came like a year or so after, but the Dawson's Creek thing, Dawson's Creek, I think was beforehand.
Okay.
I just remember Dawson's Creek being older than Buffy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is.
Viewers, if you have any thoughts on this, please chime in and let us know. But he was that kind of like hunky nerdy ideal like boy. You know, he wasn't super butch, he wasn't, you know, very buff. He was very
Boy Next Door.
boy next door romantic look. And he reveals that he was a year older than Buffy and she had a huge crush on him, which he knew about. And you know, he just immediately like edges on in and like to that group. And Buffy is so happy to see him again, inviting him to the Bronze. When Buffy shows up to the Bronze, Xander and Willow and Ford are already there. And they are playing pool, and apparently Ford is telling embarrassing stories about Buffy.
Yes. So he very quickly like integrates himself into the group. Now, I want to say it's probably fair. It's a fair comparison to say that Ford's probably as close as Buffy has to a Xander for Willow. This is her closest male relationship from, you know, basically her previous life in LA. So,
and she talks about when she was little, listening to the song "I Touch Myself." If you watch for the rest of the episode, like Willow has this look on her face, and she's like trying to work something out for the rest of that scene. And all the conversation's going along, and she's kind of tracking it, but she's really furrowed browed and like her eyes, and she's like, and then right at the end of the scene, she goes, "Oh, that's what that song is about."
mm-hmm.
And I have had those moments so many times where I was like, I think the song was "When You Touch Me Like This and You Hold Me Like That." It's so hard to believe, but it's all coming back to me.
Celine Dion, yep.
And I didn't realize it was about sex until I was much older. And I was like, oh.
I actually didn't realize that until right now. You mean it's not about hugging?
It's not about cuddles. It's not about cuddle.
That's what I thought the song "To Become One" was about when I was like by the Spice Girls. I thought it was about snuggles. It's not about snuggles. There's a line that's like, "Get it on, get it on. Tonight is the night that you become one." And I'm like, cuddles. Yes.
Yeah, cuddles. Cuddling is the way. Yep.
Who doesn't like a good snuggle?
How many of us have been naive Willow or naive Buffy? Like, that's what that says.
Mm-hmm.
I love her face though, because like the camera's not really on her. She's just kind of like out of focus, but the entire time you just see her trying to work this out in her head.
Mm-hmm. Like, what could that mean? Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Ford shows up at a good time, right? Because Buffy isn't like sure exactly what's going on with Angel. So having him show up now works very well for her. Yep. Well, for him actually, but we'll get to that. So Buffy does see Angel, and Angel lies to her face.
Mm-hmm.
What were you doing last night? Not seeing Drusilla. Like that might have been as like what he says to her. Like boldface lies to her, and it's the first time that he has really done this.
Mm-hmm. And she clocks it. She's like, he just lied to me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, oh, I was out hunting, or he just lied straight to her
Mm-hmm.
face. And so she's like, never mind, I don't want to drink. Meanwhile, we've got Xander and Willow and Ford's like, he looks older than her. And Xander's like, you're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
and then he's like, wow, your hand's cold. And Xander's like, you're not wrong.
I do love Xander in those moments where like his funny snide remarks that are like, you know, you're not wrong. There's an obvious thing that we all know that you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And like his little funny quips that he has. I do really appreciate Xander and his delivery of those.
Yep. Oh, so I was totally wrong earlier because now I remember the Jenny and Giles thing. She's telling him she's taking him on a date and it's a surprise.
Oh, yes.
And he's like, well, I don't know what to wear. And she's like, do you have any other clothes that are not tweed? And he's like, well, no. So he leaves with Ford from the Bronze because she wants to get away from Angel. And I think she also wants to, like, make him jealous because Ford is pretty and Ford, you know, has history with her and is alive and can see her in the daylight and
isn't like 200 years older than her.
And so she leaves with Ford and she's kind of like, yeah, boyfriendish. Like she kind of starts to play it coy and then doesn't. And then she senses a vampire. And so she sends Ford away. And then Ford reveals to her, hey, I know you're the Slayer. There were all those vampires back in her old high school. Remember
that you slayed.
Remember that thing with all the vampires in her high school? Yeah.
And Buffy is probably the worst Slayer in history as far as keeping her slay secret. No longer has to keep this secret from one of her dearest friends. But then they separate, and Ford goes off to his like secret alleyway entrance to this underground club, which is for vampire wannabes.
Yep.
And this is where we first meet Lily, aka Chantel, aka Anne Steele. And she is surprisingly a reoccurring character. This is the first time we see her. She not only comes, we see her again in Buffy and then also in Angel.
Several times in Angel.
Yeah. So she is a fun Easter egg, really, in this. But this is when we first meet her. She's very innocent. The lonely ones, that's what she refers to vampires. You know, they're just misunderstood. And, you know, you have a guy walking around with the Dracula cape on, and they took every cliche they could think of and tossed it into this, like, underground club of vampire worshipers, basically.
Yep. Where videos of Dracula are playing in the background, and Ford is like quoting Dracula to himself.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So immediately we're all like, well, this isn't good. Nothing good is gonna happen here, because he knows Buffy is this. We can just go off the fact that he knows Buffy is the Slayer, and now he's at this vampire worshipping cult and clearly has some pull here. Like, it's very obvious immediately that he probably runs the place, which we find out later is the case.
Angel does go
Oh, to Willow's?
Yes, he shows up at her bedroom and she invites him in. And then she's mortified when she realizes that her bra is on the bed and she's just invited Angel in, and she like swoops it underneath a pillow, like, oh no.
Yeah.
Abroad! Angel's never seen one of those before.
He's still a virgin. Most people don't know that. But so Angel's there because he said he has a bad feeling about Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's basically pulling a Xander. He's right, but I mean, Xander's been right before too. So he has Willow do the internet thing and track it, like some information down about Ford, and they find out he's not actually enrolled at Sunnydale. He's just showing up every day and going to class, which we know means not actually entering a classroom, and
Mm-hmm.
just lurking.
Did they not have security at all in that school? Like,
I don't think so, because I mean, this would have been before Columbine, so definitely not.
yeah, so I do love it. Willow's like, when he says, I need you to look up a name for me, and she asks the name, and he's like, Billy Fordham, and she's like, if I say something, will you please not bite me?
Mm-hmm.
But again, Willow also is like, okay, let's look out for my friend. Like, this is someone that I care about. Let's make sure this person who has re-entered her life is on the up and up.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, it's a check that will not take that long for Willow,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
takes seconds really for her.
And I think we've seen before other friends kind of overstepping their bounds, caring about the safety for others. With Willow and iRobot, where
Mm-hmm.
Buffy is like, can I stalk like who this mystery person is because I care about Willow and Willow's safety. So I can understand the like, and at this point, you know what? Anytime any of my friends tell me that they're dating someone new, I am Facebook stalking
Oh
right
yeah,
away.
that is something that, like, the second someone says that they're dating someone, most of my friends now will automatically say they have a Facebook or they don't.
Yep.
Because I'm like, so what exactly is their name? And certain friends at least will just take and send me the person's profile just to save me the time, which I appreciate.
Uh-huh. You like Google search, you do the Facebook search,
Mm-hmm.
see if their screen names pop up anywhere else. And
Yeah, normal stuff. Because I mean, I think we've all, like, once you get to be a certain age at least, you've accidentally found out that a friend was being cheated on by being on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Completely by accident. Well, for me anyway, always completely by accident. It's happened, I think, 3 times, which feels like a lot.
So I guess like the realms of privacy kind of have eroded over the years, but this was a new thing.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, let's run a background check on this guy. And something pings, but then Willow's mother calls her name and she says, get out of my room because I can't have boys over.
And Angel obliges.
And and she says, come by at sunset tomorrow and we'll do some more stalking. And which later Xander's like, he was in your bedroom?
Yep.
Ours is a forbidden love.
I love Willow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so now Willow knows that Ford is a liar, liar, pants on fire. And she has to see Buffy the next day. Angel has the luxury of just getting to go hide in his apartment. Willow has like information now that she has to decide what to do with.
And she is so awkward. And Willow's, Buffy's like, Willow, have you been having coffee? And she's like, it makes me high.
Yeah.
And then she runs away.
Yeah, and Ford's just there like, okay.
Uh-huh. But, yeah, so, and this is when Giles, like, comes over and he's like, hey, Jenny's taking me somewhere mysterious tonight. I don't know where. Here's her beeper thingy.
Yeah.
in case you need help with studying.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, no, it's cool. He knows I'm the Slayer. And Giles is like,
Yeah.
hang on.
Did you miss a memo?
Are you using your secret identity to lure in boys to date?
Yeah. And Ford, I almost said Owen, are hanging out. It's after dark.
Yep.
And
you're on campus.
And there are vampires afoot.
Mm-hmm.
So Buffy goes and is fighting and slays one. And then Ford, at the same time, pins a vampire down. Is like, give me some information and I'll let you go. And he does, and he lets the vampire go.
And then lies about it to Buffy.
Yes, everyone's lying to like Buffy this episode. Lie to me. Yep. And letting the vampire go was actually a huge mistake because that's how he gets caught in his lie. Always kill your vampires, listeners, always. So the vampire is breaking into the library because he needs she needs a book. One of Giles's books, and we know how he is about his books. He's not thrilled when it goes running out the library. Because it's the what is that book called? I want to call it the Thorax, but that's not it. Codex.
Yes.
Thorax.
No, it's not the Codex. The Codex was the one from season 1. It's the one that Ford said that he had taken care of. And they go back to the factory that, Spike and Drew are living in. And Ford is like obsessed with like horror film cliches. And he's like, you got to say the thing. You got to say the thing. And Spike's like, I just want to kill you. Like, why would I not just want to kill you? I don't want to make you immortal. But he says, I'll trade you. I will trade you for like the Slayer, basically. He says, I'll give you the Slayer if you make me immortal.
Yeah. And not just the Slayer. He's going to give them, a free meal. Like Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving. You're going to have to unbutton your pants after you get done feeding.
Yep.
For free.
And so we've got, so this is going down while Buffy was with Ford. We've got Xander, Xander, Angel, and Willow going to the Sunset Club where they meet Chanterelle, and Angel is super mean to her. She's like, you're so confrontational. Like, other people can have opinions and thoughts too,
Yeah, because she is saying how sweet and cuddly vampires are to Angel, who's a vampire that hates vampires. And he was like, these people don't know anything about vampires. And then a vampire who is dressed exactly like Angel, struts on by. And he was like, oh. Like, there's just that moment because Xander and Will are like, yeah. A little bit of a cliche there, buddy.
Angel goes to Buffy to be like, hey, your friend Ford's not on the up and up. He's like part of a group that worships vampires. And she starts interrogating him about Drusilla because she saw a picture of Drusilla.
Yep, in one of Giles's books.
Yep.
And they think that she had been killed in Prague.
Yep. But apparently that darned mob in Prague almost killed her, but did not.
Yes. And that's the cure that Spike is looking for, because it did leave her in a weakened state.
Yeah. So he says to her, sometimes the truth is worse than the lie. Like, sometimes the truth is uglier. And she's like, you owe it to me. I don't need you to just tell me. Like, tell me the truth. And he tells her about all the horrible things that he did to Drusilla when he was a monster, when he was, a soulless vampire.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like hearing about your partner's exes, like when they were the bad guy in the relationship. When Instead of being like, oh, my crazy ex, if they're like, I was in this relationship and I was a terrible person in this previous relationship, and I did all sorts of horrible things to my ex-girlfriend. That's kind of like what he's basically explaining. You know, I was obsessed with Drusilla and I did all these horrible things to her, and now he's kind of obsessed with Buffy.
Oh yeah, which plays out not too long later. But now Drusilla had like a gift of like premonitions beforehand. Like she was a little special to begin with, which might have been one of the things that drew Angel or Angelus to Drusilla. But he took and killed all of her family members slowly to help drive her insane, which I imagine she also partially saw coming. One thing that we see in a much later episode of Angel or Buffy is Drusilla is confessing to her priest, and he's actually feeding on the priest on the other side, and he pretends to be her to be the priest, and says like, oh well, you're evil. And she's like, I don't want to be evil. Like she's a very devout Christian, to the point where the day that she does flee to a convent after he kills her entire family, and on the day she's to take her holy orders is the day he turns her into a vampire. Because that's who Angelus was. So yeah, and I can't imagine like being the Slayer, sitting there hearing all of this.
So, you know, next day at school, Ford's like, I really enjoyed last night. And she's suspicious of Ford. And he's like, I want to do it again tonight. I have something secret planned. Like, I want to surprise you, which kind of harkens back to Jenny Calendar wanting to surprise Giles. And her surprise for Giles was awful because it was monster trucks.
Include like at the end of just Giles there like, ugh.
Poor shell-shocked Giles. So surprises in this episode are not good surprises.
No.
Buffy, since she's suspicious, she follows him. She doesn't wait until nighttime. She follows him, and Ford says it's a little drafty in here to Diego, and Diego like sneaks behind Buffy and traps them inside. And you know, she says, what were you expecting me? And he goes, yeah, actually, I was anticipating this. It's all part of my master mechanic, like, you know, manipulations, because I'm just like Dracula. And
he's like laughing and like very excited and proud of himself. Not only these people who like, when he met them, he knew they were going to be sheep he was leading to the slaughter, but one of his best friends. And he goes ahead and like, because she was like, this isn't you, the hell is going on? Because she straight up said like, you know, these people aren't making it out of here, they're not being turned into vampires. And he then goes to tell her about he has a brain tumor and he has 6 months to live, and it's going to be awful. And like, even with everything going on, like this still like hurts her because this is her friend's in pain, but also she recognizes, because he's talking to the Slayer, someone who has had to give up her life to do what's best for the world. So she's not the one to ask for sympathy when you decide that your life is worth more than literally a room full of people, let alone someone who is a really good friend.
And this is one of the times where she really explains, like she really drives home the mythology of this. You do not turn into a vampire. Like you are not a vampire. A vampire takes over your body. Like a demon moves in and it's got your memories and it's got your face, but it's not you. You are dead. And he's like, well, it's better than nothing.
And she just has to like internally be like, thump. Hand forehead. So she's trying to get everyone to be like, we need to get out of here. And, you know, pipe to the back of her head, she falls down the stairs. Is saying like, why are you so upset? Like, this is great. And
Yep.
um,
We're going to live forever. They're going to bestow their blessings upon us. And
yep.
she's the one that when Spike enters, he rips her little necklace off, that very 90s choker necklace, rips it from her neck, and starts feeding and says, "Save the Slayer for me."
Yeah, and then it
And
tosses her aside.
within seconds of this happening, Buffy has clocked that Drusilla is up, like up high, up on one of the railings, looking weak and not feeding. And she launches herself, climbs up chains, and puts a stake right to Drusilla's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because
Spike, go ahead.
also in that book, it said one that she, must be weakened, if she's not dead, but also that she is it said sometimes paramour of Spike.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, I don't know if they say it in that, but she is Spike's sire. I don't know if they directly say that in this episode,
I think so.
but it would have been listed in the Watcher Diaries for sure. So it's something she would have most likely have known, because I highly doubt when she saw Drusilla's picture, that there was anything she did not read.
But I mean, so at this point, she knows that this is someone very special to Spike.
Mm-hmm.
But, immediately, like, Spike's like, everyone stop. Like, don't care about any of these people. Gotta take care of Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody makes it out. Like, even Chanterelle is, like, hobbling away, holding her neck. They all get out. They run away, suddenly realizing, vampire's not so great. Except for Ford, who is knocked unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gets karma immediately by that. I mean, he's the one that hits Buffy on the head with a pipe. Also, one thing I also wanted to point out, when Spike initially comes in, the mood in that room changes immediately, because he comes in vamp face, right? It's not what they're seeing on TV. Clearly, none of them have seen a vampire before. And human instinct takes over at that point, where they know that they are now prey. These are not the lonely ones. These are the murderous ones. So, so Buffy gets everyone out, including herself, and kind of like throws Drusilla in and closes the door right in Spike's face. And then he's like, "Where's the doorknob?"
Yep. Oh, crap. Can't get out of here. But Ford says, "I delivered my end. You need to uphold your end of the bargain." And so it's, a few nights later, and Buffy and Giles are standing over Ford's grave. And again, I've got some confusion, because I don't know, like, did his dad actually transfer, or had he, like, run away? Like, why is he being buried there and not back in LA with his parents?
Yeah.
But she starts, like, asking questions, like the big questions of Giles, and how she doesn't know, like, who to love and who to hate and who to trust, and people are people sort of thing. And Giles tells her that that's part of growing up, and she's like, "Well, I want to stop." Like, none of that.
Me.
Well, so then she stakes Ford, because he comes up as a vampire, and she dusts him very quickly. And he says, what do you want to say?" She says, "Lie to me." And he tells her, like, the good guys always win. The bad guys are easily identifiable with their pointy horns and black hats, and no one ever dies, and everyone lives happily ever after. And she's like, "Liar."
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a terrible lie.
Yeah.
But it's true. I think this episode is dealing a lot with how the truth is hard.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is complicated and messy and not easy. And it's, the lie is simple. The lie, the fabrication that Ford wanted to believe that he could live on as a pretty young vampire instead of dying from a horrible disease. Like, and he wanted to become the villain so that it made it easier in black and white, and it's not black and white.
There's a
And
lot of gray.
there was still a line that had to be drawn where Buffy's like, I still feel for you, I'm hurt for you, I grieve for you, but I'm still going to do what's right. And so that is a lot of like, good lies, bad lies, and the harsh truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lie to me.
Yeah.
Takes us on to our second very Giles-centric episode of the week.
Yes, the Dark Age, which is, I always think it's funny because it's clearly like Giles' Dark Age, but also he's so old that he has dark ages.
Mm-hmm.
So this opens up with this, someone is running, right? They're we don't know exactly what's going on. They're clearly being followed. And we find out that it's at Sunnydale High.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't make it to where they're going, which was to find Giles.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wouldn't be at home. He would be at a library late at night.
Yep.
The school library.
And the janitor, who has great mutton chops, by the way, is like, he's our librarian, next building over. And the guy turns around and he sees this like staggering corpse lady. I have so many questions because this guy apparently flew in from London. If Deirdre flew in from London as well as a corpse, like did no one on that plane notice that the corpse was there? Like,
well, when Jenny Calendar is possessed, it takes her a little while. I mean, she would have to literally hop right on a flight, I think, to stand a chance of making it. But yeah, there's questions. And we know that she's not in the United States when she is killed, because when Giles calls to check on her, he's like, I'm so sorry, I know it's
5 a.m.
I'm there.
Yep.
And then he finds out that she's dead.
Yep. So like some continuity potholes maybe, but so we get Deirdre and Philip, because she says his name and he says her name, and we're like, okay, we've got Deirdre and Philip was looking for Giles, but he's dead because Buffy was playing her not music at the time.
Just sounds.
Mm-hmm. And Giles says, my brains are dribbling out my ears. And he says this, and then we float to Deirdre dribbling into this blue slime.
Very Alex Mack from Nickelodeon back in the day.
I did not have Nickelodeon.
Oh, The Strange World of Alex Mack. She like is exposed. She's in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Mm-hmm.
The younger sister plays Alex Mack. And she was exposed to toxic waste and gets this superpower where she turns into a puddle of goo and like can just go places. So
okay,
that's what's going on here. It's Alex Mack, this very lovely early 90s reference.
Okay.
That even you don't get.
Sorry.
I'm alone in my oldness.
So they are playing, we get to Buffy and Willow playing a game of Anywhere But Here, and they're recounting their fantasies. And Buffy says Gavin Rossdale, and Willow says John Cusack. I don't know who Gavin Rossdale is. I mean, I don't know who John Cusack is, but
he was a rocker.
Okay. And then Xander says Amy Yip at the water park. And apparently she was like a Chinese like erotic model with a movie called Sex and Zen. And like, I've never watched it, but apparently like she was a sex icon. And so he was like, Asian sex icon, that's my ideal. All the time in the water park.
Yeah, and this game is something that they will play repeatedly throughout all of the seasons, basically. Like, it flashes back to this. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think Xander, it's always, basically the same thing. It's either that it's always at a water park or it's always, yep.
But, so then Giles tells Buffy that, like, later there's going to be a blood delivery at the hospital, which is Meals on Wheels for vampires. And this is where we see Jenny Calendar talking about dog-earing the book and telling him that he's a fuddy-duddy. And, I never told you a fuddy-duddy. So like, no one never says anything else. And she's like, well, you're a sexy fuddy-duddy. And she's like, I really like watching you squirm. Maybe this weekend I can make you squirm. and ooh. And so, and it looks like things are getting good, and they kiss. There is a kiss. And then she does a little step away for class starting and the students not seeing them. And things are going so well until Giles walks into the library.
Yep, because he's the detective's waiting for him, right?
Yes.
And
a detective and 2 police officers in uniform.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like, hey, this dead guy was found. Looking for you. Any ideas? And he was like, what? And then they say who it is. And Giles said, like,
they don't yet.
Well, yeah. So
he has to identify the body.
Yeah.
They're just like, we need to talk to you about this. The only identification was this thing with your name and then Cordelia saunters in, and he's like, Cordelia. and he like gestures to the police officers, and she immediately is like, oh great, I have a parking ticket, it's totally bogus. And he like yells her name, and she's like, why do people always do that? I'm not clueless, I can take a hint. And then he has to tell her the hint.
Yeah, because she says, what's the hint?
Come back later. I am dealing with the cops. Mm-hmm. So then they go to the morgue, and he identifies it as Philip. And he sees this tattoo.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he says, oh, I don't recognize the tattoo, but he very obviously recognizes the tattoo. He forgets to meet Buffy for delivery day. But Angel shows up and says, oh, only one bag was ruined. And Buffy's like, can I trust you to get the rest of these bags of blood into the hospital and not into your mouth? Like, I gotta go check on Giles. And he kind of gives her this like guilty look, like, yeah.
He's like, all of the blood.
That one bag was already kind of messed up.
Can I just put a straw in it? Little pouch.
But so then she goes to check on Giles, and Giles has over the course of the day developed terrible stubble. Mm-hmm. Like, if he gets that much stubble over the course of one day, is he usually shaving twice a day? Like,
maybe. My dad had to do that. I just remember him, like, before work he would use his electric razor, and then after work he would have to use it. So
but yeah, so he's been drinking. He
looks like he smells.
Yeah.
He looks like he smells. Like and I think this is the first time Buffy goes to his apartment that we see. Clearly she knows where it is. She's definitely been there before. But he will not let her in.
And he sends her away. He says, I'm dealing with some stuff. I'll see you on Monday. Mm-hmm. And so then he calls, and there's a list of names, and the top name is crossed off. I think it was Tom. And then the next name is Deirdre, and then Philip. And so he can see, okay, the only two names left on this list are Ethan Rayne and Rupert Giles.
Yeah. And it's a Saturday, and they're doing computer projects willingly, helping out Miss Calendar.
Yeah. Basically, Jenny Calendar said, you guys are failing, and you need to do this work in order to not fail my class, or to catch up to not my fail class. And then Willow's just helping out because
it's Willow. She's clear, like she hacks into everything. She's clearly not failing a computer class. But so Buffy shows up because one, that's where all of the Scoobies are, and two, Miss Calendar should have some insight. She's hoping, and
especially because they were supposed to have plans that Saturday night.
Yes. And when is it that we find out that? Oh no, we don't find this out. We find out later. Never mind. So I will bring it later.
Okay. So she says, you know, something's going on with Giles. He was drinking. And Willow's like, tea, right? He was drinking tea? And Buffy's like, no, not tea.
Could be a hot toddy.
And so she's like, okay, well, I'm going to like figure out what's going on. And Cordelia says, oh, well, you know, he seemed fine when he was talking to those cops. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, it was something about a homicide. And they're like, Cordelia, you know, step up here and step outside of the realm of Cordelia into the rest of the world. There's something big going on. So Buffy goes to the library because she wants to get some kind of information. And she finds Ethan Rayne, who topples a bookshelf on top of her, and she gets out of the way and she catches him. And
might I also say, like, I find it a huge insurance liability that he basically just goes meh, and it falls over. Like,
especially with all the earthquakes.
The earthquakes, just students being stupid, like, those things should be bolted into the ground. Like, what is this? So yeah, and Buffy obviously recognizes him from the asshole who turned her into a helpless weakling.
Yep, and sold her the bad dress.
Yeah.
The good bad dress, but the bad dress.
The bad dress, yes.
So she calls Giles and she's like, what's the mark of Igon? And he's like, you need to get away from there. Like, Ethan is a problem. Ethan's dangerous. She's like, I'm not going anywhere. And then dead Philip shows back up. And they lock him into, like, the rare books section because they randomly have, like, a book vault in the high school library. And Philip is just talking in gurs and args, and attacking. And Giles shows up, and he manages to break free. And Jenny gets knocked unconscious. And then Philip turns into a big pile of goo and, like, leaks onto Jenny.
Not a ton, but we see her hand spasm, and she kind of is alert again-ish.
Yep.
Making like little sounds. And Giles is immediately like, I have to get Jenny home. And nobody seems to, like, clearly Giles is impaired still in some way. I mean, he's up all night drinking. He's very distraught. Had he not been those things, I think he may have realized, like, hey, this goo just touched Jenny. Like, this is a problem. But he is all of those things, so he does not see. And nobody else knows enough about Igon to know that this is a problem.
So they start researching, and Buffy kind of steps up, and she's like, we've lost our Giles. Our Giles is our go-to person. We've lost our Giles, so we have to be the go-to people. Let's hit the books.
two other things that I had made note of during the scuffle with Philip and everything, and when Ethan tries to escape, Cordelia is the one that stops him by kicking him in the shin.
Uh-huh.
So she has this like funny little history now of being like, hey, I'm gonna bite the vampire and I'm kicking this guy in the shin. And like Cordelia is starting to really like, her personality very clearly was always someone who was going to kick someone in the shin,
Yep.
but now she has an outlet for her aggression that is a positive thing. And then also we see again Xander protecting Cordelia in this.
Yes.
That theme continues.
Yes. Yes. So they do their research. They learn about the mark of Igon, or Igon the Sleepwalker, who is a demon who possesses your body while you're unconscious, and it's like a drug. It makes you feel euphoric and powerful, and then you get him out of your body and put him back in his little mystical bottle, basically. But if you do it wrong, he takes over your body. He kills you, takes over your body, and then keeps jumping from dead person to dead person.
Mm-hmm.
Seeking out anybody who has his symbol on them.
Yes. And this is, I think they call Igon the sleepwalker, because you have to be in an altered state when you like, someone has to be in an altered state when summoned because it has to have somewhere to go.
Yes.
So yeah, Giles was into some really freaky stuff.
Yep. And so then Jenny is with drunk Giles and she's trying to seduce him. And he keeps rebuffing her and he's like, you were just through a traumatic experience. Like, I really want to be with you. I'm really attracted to you, but now is not the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jenny reveals that she is Igon, or Igon possessed. And she's like, you were always the one worried about people getting hurt. Boo to you. I want to have some fun and kill you.
Yeah.
And so Buffy arrives and Jenny jumps out the window, basically says, 3 down, 2 to go. I'm going to get Ethan. I'm going to get Giles.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And is it at this point that Giles completely fills, was it the library? No, it's now that he fills in Buffy.
Yes, it's now that he fills in Buffy.
And he gives like his own history in that like, he kind of freaks out when he finds out that his life is planned for him. You know, he is studying at Oxford, but he's 21 and he was studying history by day and the occult at night.
Mm-hmm.
And at 21 is just like, I can't do this anymore, and hightails it to London and gets involved with a bad crowd.
Yep. And we see this picture, or Willow finds this picture of Giles in a leather jacket with like rocker hair and a guitar, and they're like, Giles?
And I love that is clearly a photo of Anthony Stewart Head when he was younger.
Yep.
Because he was I want, you should ask your mom if that's around like when he was the Folgers coffee man or whatever.
I think it's even earlier than that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, or the Rocky Horror Show, not the Rocky Horror, the Rocky Horror Show. He was in the stage adaptation as Frankenfurter. So like, there was definitely a period of his life where he was, you know,
mm-hmm.
into the freaky stuff.
And
so I adore him.
Mm-hmm. He's just I absolutely adore that man. But yeah, I don't know why whenever I think of Giles, I just remember like in high school you telling me about like your mom just being like, oh yeah, see, he did coffee commercials back in Scotland. And occasionally, like usually once an episode, like, or if I've just started, like if I'm just watching one episode, and when Giles is on screen, I'm like, sold coffee. How very American of you. Now go drink your tea.
Now go drink your tea.
Yeah. Because Giles would never sell coffee. Tea, yes.
So Buffy goes to try and hunt down Ethan because she needs to protect him while they try to figure out killing Igon, which she has the others on. And Giles is like, I don't really know, like, you know, how to defeat this without killing Jenny.
Yeah.
And so Ethan, of course, backstabber that he is, says ladies first, and then knocks her out. And poor Buffy's head. She's been hit in the back of the head a lot lately.
I'm really hoping that Slayers have extra strong skulls.
Yep. And so he tattoos her.
Yeah.
He puts a tattoo on her.
And not like with a tattoo gun. It's like a stick and poke. So that is one of the longest ways to do a tattoo and one of the most painful. Like he couldn't even go and like rob a tattoo place and steal one of their machines. Clearly has no problem doing that sort of stuff. He does this to be extra mean, I feel.
Well, although maybe the Mark of Igon requires it. Like, maybe you can't just have a tattoo gun. Maybe you got to have your special, like...
Somehow, I don't think that demon is that picky because so few people are getting on the worshipping bandwagon. So I think, like, if you wore a t-shirt that had that symbol on it, be like, oh, thank God. Or thank me, probably, I'm sure. But yeah, so, and this is all happening at the Halloween shop, the abandoned one. So now when all this is happening, Willow realizes Angel is the key to solve the problem.
Before she does, Xander and Cordelia are sniping at each other, and it's more, and it's more, and it's more, and he's like, let's throw down, and Willow throws herself between them, and she goes, hey, like, our friend is in danger, stop, like, if you're not with me, then get out of my library. But again, this is showing this development of a relationship, an antagonistic relationship, but a relationship is developing between Cordelia and Xander.
Yes, a very unhealthy one, but.
But yeah, so then Willow gets her like, oh, hey, I have an idea. I have a good idea.
Yeah, as they're talking, she realized it just needs a dead body. Hey, we know one that is walking around and fresh.
Yep.
So Giles also realizes about the same time exactly where Buffy is because he has been getting visions from the demon. So he sees what Ethan has done to Buffy, and he's still not quite in his right mind, and like falls over himself and is like, Buffy! And off he goes.
Yep. So Igon, as Jenny, shows up at the costume shop.
Looking very ugly.
Takes a look at Ethan, is like, screw you. Tosses him aside, starts to go after Buffy. Buffy starts to fight. Giles shows up, and then Angel busts on through and starts strangling and overpowering Jenny. And sure enough, Igon jumps from Jenny's body into the next nearest dead body, which is Angel. And Angel's like, I've been a vampire for 241 years.
Yeah, it's like, I have a demon inside me that's been spoiling for a fight.
Yep. So he's like, I took care of it. Igon's gone. Like, hi, Igon.
Which actually, Igon survives by hopping into a rat.
Really?
Yes. When I was researching the episode, that was one of the things. It's like, Igon survived by possessing a dead rat. We find out about that again in Death and Consequences.
Okay.
Yep. And I was like, I don't think I ever picked up on that.
I didn't either. So then we've got, Jenny is now kind of cold towards Giles. She's been invaded and assaulted, basically.
Yes.
And does not trust Giles at this point because she needs to sort things through herself. And so she, says to him, like, we can talk at some point. And he goes as if to kiss her, and she slides away. And she
Yeah.
says, at some point, like, she's just very cold. She can't
deal.
be with him, can't, like, at this point. And Giles talks about, I don't think she'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself. And he has this bonding moment again with Buffy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is more of this establishment of him as a father figure to her, where he's saying, like, I am a person. Most adults are people, but I am and I was a person who had struggles and a different past and a difficult past. And that really, it sets them together as a team. And
Yeah, and because so sometimes it can be difficult for adults, for children or teenagers who are in their care, to see them as human, right? Like that's what happens when children grow up. They start to realize that their parents or parental figures, teachers, are human, that they have lives that don't just revolve around keeping that little human alive, right? And I think a lot of parents can fear that sometimes, but it can be some of the most bonding moments of teenage years, because teenagers are so like, you don't understand, and da, da, da. And Giles has been through some stuff.
Yep.
That's some crazy stuff.
I tell the story sometimes about the first time I ever saw my mom drunk. I was 17 years old. We were at a family wedding in Greece. And because our family grew up in the United States away from all of the extended family, I never really got to see her let loose with her siblings. And so this was the first time I got to see her, like, letting loose at a celebration with her siblings. And she and her sisters were giggling over the word cock for cocktail. And like, it really, like, it was like this, all of a sudden, this phase shift of perception of, oh my goodness, my mother is a person.
Yeah, when I was 21, I went to a cousin's wedding, and with a friend of mine, and my mother was there, obviously, and my mother drank us both under the table. And the next day was bright and cheery. Ooh. And we were both like, ugh. So, and that was like, because my mom only ever had, like, a drink or so at weddings, but for whatever reason, like, and maybe she was always just someone who could really handle her liquor, like, when she was drinking. But like, since I now had a frame of reference and was like kind of keeping track of like where she was, I was just like, oh, how are you still up? You're old.
But yeah, so these were two really Giles heavy developmental episodes. And this takes us to next week, where we're discussing What's My Line, parts 1 and 2.
Yes. Yeah, some big changes are coming in the Buffyverse. Big change.
And more that we shall learn about Drusilla.
Yeah. And basically all, like, our little vampire trio, being Angel, Spike, and Drusilla.
Yep.
But Drusilla definitely moves from being this pretty little doll, basically, to being a fierce, scary vampire.
Yep.
But as always, thank you for Jossin with me.
Yes, thank you for just Jossin with me, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. No.